I've always like craved and wanted to have that sense of satisfaction from work. And so for me, success is feeling really happy about the stuff that I do. My name's Eugenie Teasley and I work at Uber. I lead all of the social impact work internationally. And that really means thinking about how Uber can sort of contribute to the cities and communities where we operate around the world. I guess my kind of question that I ask myself, that I try and solve through all the things that I do every day, is how can we use what we have at our disposal, so our resources, like being able to offer rides or being able to offer meals via Uber Eats, or even like huge truckloads of things via Uber Freight, which is the trucking company that's mostly based out of the US and Canada. But how can we use all of those things and that we have at our disposal to support cities and communities sort of where there's a need? And an example of that might have been during the COVID-19 crisis, sort of in the first half of 2020, where suddenly everybody went on lockdown everywhere around the world, sort of country by country, and people were told not to move. But of course, some people really needed to move and get around, and those would have been the doctors and the nurses, and actually, like, everybody, like the rubbish people who need to go and like move all the trash and the recycling, like, and to help keep the cities still going. And we worked, and we also wanted to ensure that drivers who earn through Uber, they still had a way of being able to earn some income when so many people like were not taking trips anywhere. So part of my job was to figure out how to set up partnerships or relationships with different hospitals or governments or public health institutions so that we could offer free rides to doctors, to nurses, to people who work for the city in other ways, to help people still move around. What I didn't realize at the time is how much I didn't know. All that I could feel at the time was how much I didn't know what on earth I wanted to do. And so I kept trying things. After a while, I thought that I might want to go into something called international development, which is basically working for charities, but not in the UK, like sort of elsewhere. And I went and did a volunteer project in Kenya, and I kind of led the project. And while I was there, the local kind of leaders of the organization invited me to take the top job. And by this point, I was in university. I was about 22. I didn't know anything. I had no understanding of Kenya or the context there. I had no understanding. It was going to be like an organization that was supporting women who were widows because of HIV and AIDS, and sort of doing more education stuff. But I had no kind of context. I had no medical kind of knowledge. My degree was like nothing in science. And so really only just asking me because it was going to have like cachet, having like a white English person sort of running the show. And I just felt like that shouldn't be my job. There was an amazing person in the community there who knew everything, and that should be their role. So that's what I said. I was like, it's definitely not the job for me. It should be my view is that it should be like this person. And that was that. And it also made me then very nervous about doing charity work overseas, because I felt like it wasn't my place to make big decisions that affected communities other than my own. And that's actually when I decided to go into teaching, because I thought if I want to go and do this stuff for other people, I should start like in the UK. And I always liked like working with young people. And I just thought that might be an interesting thing to do. So I gave it a go. I often describe it like a Venn diagram. So if you have one circle, which is purpose, or like the good stuff that you can make happen in the world, and you've got another circle, which is profits, which is like actually how the world works. Like you need money to sort of make stuff happen. I mean, I wish it wasn't like that, but it definitely is. And if you try and push those two circles together, there's going to be that bit in the middle. And that's the bit that's the space that I'm increasingly interested in playing in. So I started off in the purpose side, on the teaching side, in the non-profit side, etc. It just wasn't about making any money. It was about like doing good stuff. And I think I've sort of come to the point over time where I've realized that actually to make change on an individual level, doing stuff, and charities are super smart. They are some of the most sort of enterprising, sort of idea generating organizations, because they don't have to turn a profit, because they can react and respond to the needs that they see on the ground and the people that they're working with or the causes that they're championing. So they're really responsive, really energetic, and kind of tenacious. They will just find ways to make things happen with very little, and I find that like amazing. But I think it's I think it's really hard to then scale and then keep that energy, and also some efficiency. And what I found going into the for-profit world is they are hyper efficient and hyper organized and really lean. Like they will make sure that every dollar or cent is kind of spent very well and very wisely. And I kind of like being in the middle of them. And there are some things which actually you need to have where it's not about money, it's just about giving away. And there are some moments where that really matters, particularly when it's like disaster response. So the big explosions in Beirut, you just need to go in and like do stuff there, and it's not about what you make sort of in return. But there are other things where actually for long-term like sustainable growth and impact, you want to have that mix of both the purpose side and the profit side. And I think that everybody sort of fits in that in sort of different places, and you can sort of move around within it as well. But I come back to brands like Nike, to a clothing brand called Patagonia, to even something like Volkswagen and other like cars, and also kind of fuel companies like BP and others, who are fundamentally having to reimagine and reconsider like what their role is in the world, when petrol and diesel are now considered bad things and probably not going to be what's making vehicles move around in the next few years. And that for me is like super exciting, that you can and where things can really change at significant scale. I think there's absolutely, I think it, nobody should ever be ashamed of wanting to make money and, have a good life. That is not, you can do that. You can earn, you can look after yourself and be financially independent. You can look after your family and people around you and be financially independent. And you can have a positive impact in the world through working, for a for-profit company. And I think you can do all of those things. It doesn't have to be either or. And I go back to Nike again as an example. If you go to their Instagram, for example, and you look back at their recent feed, like all their campaigns and their marketing is all focused around purpose. So when everybody was on lockdown, they had this whole advertising campaign around how everybody in the world is an athlete. And now you can just have your stage at home, etc. So it was all kind of like purpose driven. It was like, inspiring self-confidence and belief and motivation in everybody around the world. So I think that there is an increasing opportunity for the next generation of people going into work or kind of setting up businesses of their own, to be able to kind of put these two things together, and they definitely don't have to be separate. So I think there is that sort of the self-actualization sometimes just comes from that confidence to step into that next place rather than staying within sort of the comfort zone of what I know. And I think that's true. And I think I've always just been really, regardless of where it's come from. I think although my parents had very different jobs and they weren't like business jobs or kind of traditional careers, they both loved working and they had a real sense of like purpose and satisfaction from the work that they did. My dad, because of like pure academic study about Muhammad and sort of Byzantine history, my mum from her writing. And so I've always like craved and wanted to have that sense of satisfaction from work. And so for me, success is feeling really happy about the stuff that I do. And that has constantly driven me, that when I've stopped feeling happy, it sort of made me want to move on and like step into that next thing. I think that when I was going into work, there was so much about how you like appearances, and you had to kind of like look the part both on paper and in practice, and they expected a certain view, and I kind of fitted that view because I had normal looking hair and whatever, like everything was fine. It was like performing a part or kind of playing something or pretending a little bit to be something that you weren't in order to get the first step. And I feel that the world today is very different. And now there's an opportunity genuinely to be your authentic self, like every bit of you, and to go and to sort of present yourself in that way, and being, again, clear about the skills and the strengths that you have and sort of what you want to do either in the short term or in the long term, and that is really appreciated and relished by people who are, looking to sort of take on new young talent. And I think that's a huge opportunity, and I'm really envious of that. Like, I feel like I had to pretend sometimes to be things that I wasn't. And I think that now there's a huge opportunity to demonstrate that you think differently, and to celebrate if you look different to the vast majority of people who might be in a particular company, and to stand up and to kind of challenge the sort of the way things are, rather than having to conform to it and kind of nod in silent agreement, even if you don't really agree at all. So that for me is really exciting, and I hope isn't a chance for people to feel confident in presenting themselves in the way that they are, and that will be appreciated and noted and wanted in a way that maybe in the previous decade or further back isn't necessarily the case.